A new report highlighting the security situation in Nigeria has revealed that the country's security challenges escalated in 2024 when compared to 2023. The report says the increase is driven by escalating banditry and terrorist activities and the resurgence of violent actors like Bello Tunji, alongside the emergence of a new terror group like Rawa, signaling heightened terrorism risk. And now Dr. Kebiru Adamu, security analyst and CEO, become consulting or become security and intelligence. He joins me to look at this report and, of course, the interpretation of the security situation in Nigeria. He joins me live here in the studio. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Kebiru. Before we go to the report in a moment, but I think a good place to start with is the latest development in Kaduna and, of course, the Borno state. We heard that, of course, the bandits, raided and abducted people. But the army says that we're winning the war against insecurity. I mean, with all of the effort. I mean, recent time, no doubt, we're seeing effort from the military in the fight against, these activities. But in your own view, are we truly, winning the war against these activities, these menace, or we are in for a prolonged battle?
With all sense of responsibility, we're in for a prolonged battle. It is not the responsibility of the army to win a counter-terrorism operation. They are one out of about 29 different ministries, departments, and agencies that we have in the country. And I'm hoping that when they make statements like that, it will be a joint statement. The Army or the Nigerian Armed Forces, together with the other 25 ministries, departments, and agencies in security, are winning the war against terrorism. Then I'll be a little bit happier. But for any agency to single out itself with the stark reality of what we're experiencing, I think, unfortunately, it doesn't speak to that mantra of whole of government, whole of society approach to security.
But how will you describe this latest, attack in Borno and, of course, in Kaduna state, particularly? I mean, when you look at the fact that even the military army base was overrun by these, and as one wonders, what exactly, how have they become powerful even more than the military, or what? How will you address that?
As an expert in the field, I feel pained. You took time, your correspondent took time to digest the report we wrote. This was our December report. We're in the process of preparing the January 2025 report. When we concluded that report, we wrote to a few government departments to tell them this is our findings. We can see the trajectory. Right. If certain things are not done, then exactly what you read at the beginning of this news night is what was going to happen. And sadly, nothing was done, and we're reading it. So I feel pained as a Nigerian. We don't need an outsider to tell us what we need to do. We saw it, we highlighted it, we took our time. Nobody pays us. We wrote to government departments to tell them, let's do X, Y, Z. None of them responded. None of them acted upon it. Today, we're recounting what happened. The incident in Borno, it started on the 4th of January when a particular forward operating base was attacked close to Damboa. Now, from that period onward, we've recorded one after the other 10 attacks around the axis of that forward operating base, culminating in the last incident that that you reported, which happened on the 24th of January, where an ambush on military operation was carried out, and the commander of that battalion was killed together with several of his team members. So I feel pained as a Nigerian that this is what could have been averted. It wasn't averted. It's been allowed to occur. And sadly, nobody's been held responsible for this obvious failure of tactical operational and even strategic military and other forms of operation.
We're seeing a resurgence of terrorist groups like Boko Haram and ISWAP coming back, but now a new group called Lakurawa has also emerged. I mean, perhaps this is also the new headache for the Nigerian military. But what do you make of this group, and how much of a threat does it pose to compare to establish a network like Boko Haram and ISWAP?
Effectively, we have a new theater of operations, effectively. Right. And that means the little resources that we had before, that we had dedicated to counter-terrorism operations across the country, will now be divided. We have an operation Fansanyama that is essentially as large as the operation Hadinkai that is going on in the northeast. So imagine a situation where you are already complaining of a deficiency of resources when you had one operation. Now you have two operations, one in the northeast of the country and then the other one in the northwest of the country. And I'm not having of bad news, but look at the border area. When you go to the northeast, you look at the border area, then go to the northwest and look at the size of the border area. And then more importantly, just take a step ahead and look at the Sahel region and what is happening in places like Mali, Burkina Faso, right, Niger Republic, and see the proximity of those theaters with the proximity that we have in the northwest of the country, plus the socio-economic circumstances, because that is the crux of the matter. That is what we highlighted in our report, the socio-economic conditions that allow terrorism to thrive. We are not yet addressing those socio-economic conditions. Because
I was going to ask you, pardon me to jump in, because in that report you captured that more than 11,000 were killed compared to 2023's report that you released. And I mean, I wanted to ask you, what did you capture, or what did you see? What exactly is driving this crime, specifically the banditry issue, which has become a monster and of course a headache to the Nigerian military?
At the top of the chain is the socio-economic conditions.
Right.
It provides the incentive, as it were, for these bad guys. Now, the oxygen that drives banditry, that drives terrorism, they're threefold. Number one is their ability to acquire weapons. Number two, their ability to recruit new members. And then, of course, number four, the capacity that they have to continue their operations. As long as we don't block this oxygen, then they will continue to thrive. And we're not doing enough, unfortunately, to block this. They are able to generate fundings. They are able to get weapons. They are able to move around almost freely. Right. I mean, think about it. They use bikes to move from point A to point B. What have we done as a country to limit their ability to obtain those bikes? So those socio-economic conditions that has created the right condition for these groups to propagate, for me, is the greatest worry. Then the second element is the porosity of our borders. I talked earlier on about there are 7 states that are coterminous to the Sahel region in the northeast and northwest of the country. And then if you look at the developments in the neighboring countries in the Sahel, you just realize how easy it is for these guys to be moving into the country. Then the third point is climate change and our inability as a country to mitigate the risks associated with climate change. Just understand the effect that desertification is having on the northwest of the country, and then you see how easy. Then the fourth point is also the role of the governors, land governance as in particular. Governors, unfortunately, have not done very well in terms of putting forward policies that would manage the diversity within their communities. And so you have identity-based conflict that are leading to more weaponization. They are also creating vigilantes that are figured around these identities that I've mentioned. And so more weapons are coming into the communities, and these weapons are not regulated in any way. So sadly, it's the melee of circumstances that has created a very convoluted system that unfortunately we've not even begun to scratch the surface.
The argument, Doctor, is that I mean, the governors that you mentioned may not really have much to do, because the military power might lies with the federal government, and so as of course the other security agencies as well. So how do you address that? Do you think they have what it takes really, perhaps do their own bit at the state level?
More than enough. And the argument that you've just proffered has been demystified by the Lagos State governor. He has a security model that if it's allowed to thrive, today can subsist on its own. So I urge them to give him a chance in one of their convenings. Let him speak to them around his security model. They are the chairman of the state security councils. Each of them has a security vote. None of them has ever rejected that security vote. So it depends on how innovative they are in managing the constitutional powers that they have. If they lay back and do not introduce platforms that would help them to manage security at their state level, then they would have the circumstance. I've been to a state in the northwest of the country where the commissioner for internal security does not have a computer in his office. He manages security, like it was done in the 1900s. And so why wouldn't that state be bedeviled with security challenges? They have the constitutional power. If they use this constitutional power in an innovative way, like Lagos is doing, then you see the changes. Other shining examples are Enugu State. Enugu has come up with a platform that is quite innovative, and that if it's allowed to prosper, would help that state. There are a few other states too that have been quite innovative. So they do have the constitutional powers. Whether they are using that power or not is what we don't know. And like we indicated in our December report, we're calling on the president to bring the governors closer, to let them understand the role they can play in addressing the root causes of insecurity. The balance around kinetic and non-kinetic approach to security. The secret in implementing non-kinetic approach is in the governors. The federal government can do very little, and I'm praying that in this first quarter 2025, the president will sit with them in a room to let them understand, especially two instruments, and I'll quickly mention them. The National Counterterrorism Strategy, which is domiciled in the Office of the National Security Advisor, and then the Policy Framework on Countering Violent Extremism. These are instruments that if the governors embrace and come up with developmental initiatives to address the root causes of insecurity, I'm telling you, by the end of December 2025, we would have significantly reduced the security challenges that we have in the country.
Okay, let's look at the report that you released. Perhaps you need to take us through again, because when the army says, oh, look, we're winning the war actually against insecurity, our effort is paying off. And of course, given the report, which paints a grim picture of Nigeria's security state or state of security, how do we reconcile, these conflicting narratives? Your report says, look, this is what you have at the moment, which is contrary to what the army is, telling us. That's one. Then secondly, perhaps you need to tell us what would be your top priorities if you were to advise the government. What would be, or should there be, an immediate priorities? What should that be, in addressing this escalating crisis? What can be done differently, really?
Number one, with regards to your question, the army, I started by dispelling that notion. The army is just one component of the security structure that we have. There are 29 of them, and at best the army is just 4 out of that 29. So the rest of the 25, they are as important as the army. Just to give you an example, the customs and immigration, no matter how good the army or the armed forces are, if the customs and immigration don't increase the security of our borders, there is nothing the army can do. So we need to come out of that myopic approach to security and understand.
But I asked that to say that, look, the army has a direct, in terms of engagement with this banditry, bandits and banditry activities around across the country. The army, really, they have that prerogative, they have that singular privilege to engage these. Custom, I'm not sure they can engage, with bandits and all of that. That's the reason why I
this is a
that
consequence of the military legacy that has been left to us. Each and every one of the 29 that I mentioned are important. If the army is killing, and they are killing the bad guys. But if the bad guys are able to recreate, which is the point I'm making, then there is no work the army will do that would be successful. So we need to ensure that we man our borders effectively to reduce the influx of the bad guys, their ability to recruit, their ability to get weaponry. This is the mindset that I'm hoping would approach security from. The army cannot go and man our borders, and for God's sake, how many of them are there? And we're talking of 36 states plus the FCT Abuja with several theaters of operation. So we need to come out of that mindset where where we now have the 3 C's of security: collaboration, coordination, and cooperation. All these 29 need to come together in a coordinated approach so that we're able to measure their performances. Now, with regards to your second question, what are the low-hanging fruits that we need to do?
Right.
I talked about addressing the root causes. So I said I would hope in the first quarter of 2025, Mr. President will sit with the governors and explain to them those two instruments. Mr. President has given that responsibility to his National Security Advisor. That there is a need to evaluate the function of especially the National Counterterrorism Strategy and the policy framework on countering violent extremism. We need to measure how far we've gone in the implementation of that document. Let our governors see their role in that regard. And then secondly, the buy-in of the people. That's the second low-hanging fruit. We need to put those documents outside. Let the market woman in Borno State, in Baga, who can contribute to that document, let her understand the content of that document so that when she sees a bad guy, she knows who to call. She knows what to do. Right now, they don't know. And we've been implementing this document since 2016. So what are we doing? Every year, we budget money for advocacy. What are we doing with that money that has been budgeted for advocacy? We need to move from just saying all of government and all of society approach to actually saying all of government and all of society approach through the implementation of these 2 instruments that I've talked about. And there is a third one, which is the Terrorism Prohibition and Prevention Act as amended 2022. Just a few days ago, we saw the Attorney General of the Federation acting on that document when he went to court and got the Lakurawa group admitted as a terrorist organization. That is the provision of that document. So we also need to start implementing that the provisions of the TPPA 2022 as amended. It is only then that we would see a coordinated approach to addressing the security challenge that we have in the country. All the agencies that are contributing to security would need to be coordinated and work together as one. At the moment, they are not. It's sad to say.
Well, I think a good place to leave it. Thank you for your insightful analysis. Dr. Kabir Adamu is CEO of Beacon Security and Intelligence. Thank you for coming on Newsnight.
Thank you for having me.